Welcome to everyone here. I am Guillaume Desanges. I'm the president of Palais de Tokyo, and I'm very happy and proud to welcome this first event of NEST, this new initiative taken by AWARE. I'm very happy to. We are very happy to host this event, but more than hosting, to co-organize part of it and co-produced with Palais de Tokyo. I'm very happy because we share a lot with AWARE in general and with your subject today in Palais de Tokyo, the thematics you are dealing. We are. J'avais pas prévu de le faire en anglais, c'est pour ça que we are. No. I want to speak English. It's fine. Sorry for my poor accent, but we share a lot the question of feminism, of the presence of women artists, not only artists, of women in the art is very important. And I must say also that we share more than this question, because I see the name of your event, a story named Joy. It's not totally by chance, but our next season, next February in Palais de Tokyo, is called the Collective Joy. It is a name because we are also a lot working about the question of joy in Palais de Tokyo. So we are very happy. We have also other links, my dear Camille, because between AWARE and Palais de Tokyo, especially in this season, we host 3 artists in the season who are laureate or finalist of the prize AWARE. Myriam Mindu, who has a show here at Palais de Tokyo, and she will also make a performance for us tonight at 8:30. Was an exhibition who was co-produced by AWARE and DCA, le réseau des centres d'art français. We have Barbara Chase-Ribou. We are so proud to host also part of this project of Barbara Chase-Ribou, who has also AWARE Prize 21. Malal, Andrea Levi-Drazan, who has also a show here. So, and there have been before, there will be after, a lot, I'm sure. So we are we share a lot, and we also, thanks to you, begin to know more about artists, and it's a real resource, very important resources. We are also very happy to also welcome here the keynote by Trinity Mina, who is a thinker and an artist that is very inspired. It's a reference for the Palais de Tokyo. So for all those reasons, I'm very proud to welcome you here. And I just want, before leaving you the stage, to thank you very much, Camille, and your teams, and AWARE for what you do today, but what you'll do since 10 years now for French, but also international network in contemporary art. I would like to thank also the Myriam Mindu, of course, who will make the performance tonight, and ask also to say a big thank also for the teams of Palais de Tokyo, Daria de Beauvais, Eva Garino and her crew for making this event possible. I wish you a wonderful and I'm sure very interesting symposium.
Dear Guillaume, thank you so much for jumping in English. It's a very international team, moment, guest. And I want to start by thanking you all for making it, for coming. A story of named Joy. Well, the word joy, as you say, Guillaume, resonates deeply these days in a context of pain, of distress, of anxiety. So I think it's important to talk about joy, to construct a world where joy is possible, to redefine joy, to redefine links, working together, and this is really what this project is about. So I want to thank Palais de Tokyo for hosting it. We do have a lot in common. I think it's quite amazing that you have so many women artists at the same moment, and it's not a coincidence, it's really testimony of your own involvement as well as the team of Palais de Tokyo. It's not so current in France to have an institution that supports so well women artists. So to get back to the project, it is a project that is part of the 10th anniversary of AWARE. NEST is called, it's an acronym for Network for Empowerment, Solidarity and Trans-Regionality. I'm a bit crazy with acronyms, my team knows that. But it means something, of course. NEST, nurture something, it's meaning that something small will become big. And this is my hope, and I hope your hope today, that what we do today, what we've been doing yesterday, what's been going on for a year, will grow big and strong. These organizations span continents, comes from various parts of the world to collaborate transnationally with the shared commitment of amplifying women and non-binary artists and their work. NEST is actually the third leg, so to speak, of AWARE, with something called TEAM, which is an academic network, and another third organization called AMI, as of AWARE Museum Initiative and Support. So it's very simple. We work with universities, with museums, and with NGOs such as you. Those who are outside the framework of institution, outside of state-funded bodies or commercial entities. Those who are maybe a bit fragile, but who work differently, horizontally, to create another narrative. This narrative interests enormously AWARE. We're going to talk about experimentation, about safe space, about communities, about setting new agendas. We'll be highlighting methods. We'll be talking about solidarity. All these words are important, and in French they have something in common: fragility, flexibility, creativity, sorority. They all in French sound with T. Flexibilité, créativité, and they have in common to be feminine. You know, it's a very strange and difficult thing in French. There is masculine and feminine. All these words, these amazing words that we love, they're all feminine. Now, to get back of the title of today's event, it's co-produced with Palais Tokyo. It's been really thought together with the team, and I really want to thank them again. It's taken from the publication of Trinity Minha, Woman, Native, Other, Writing, Postcoloniality and Feminism, published in 1989, and recently translated in French. So again, this event today has been following months of online discussion, and one day, yesterday, of General Assembly, attended by all of you. So Guillaume has already explained the planning. I'm not going to go back to it, but I want to thank everybody, starting with my fantastic team. Nina Vols, who's been piloting this event, Carolina Hernandez, Matilda Tashiska, Manuela Danescu, as well as the fantastic team of interns who all are here working in different directions, doing all the logistics and welcoming you. And this is really important because caring is important for AWARE, caring at every level. NEST would not have been possible without the support and guidance of the Terra Foundation of American Art. We want to extend our heartfelt thanks to Francesca Rose, Eva Bobroska, Thomas Hudson, Elise Ashkar, Catherine Bourguignon, Lucy Pike, and Patricia Gonnet. This is a bit of a crazy project, and without Terra understanding of it, it wouldn't have been possible. Thank you again immensely. I want to thank again Palais de Tokyo for their trust and collaboration for this event, which is really quite unique. Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Daria. Thank you, Eva Garino, for your time and support. And finally, of course, I want to thank you, all NEST members, as well as Trinity Minha and Myriam Minidou for being there and participating in this event. So I want to conclude with these words: solidarity, fraternity, liberty, creativity, solidarité, fraternité, liberté, créativité, and the final word, assembly or assemblée. All of them feminine, all of them strong to build a stronger future. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Guillaume and Camille, for these words. And I think many about Nest has already been said. I would just like maybe to say a few words about the process of constructing Nest, because that's also very much linked to the structure of our event today. So as Camille said, we started with Nest 1 year ago. And first of all, we were looking which other structures in the world were doing similar things that we are doing, meaning working at the intersection of arts, of gender studies, of research. And then we started meeting one by one all of these organizations. And what we found is that the contexts are very different in different parts, and that's why each structure developed a very specific methodology, different practices, and often responding to gaps that were left by institutions. They were very creative in inventing new methodologies. So yeah, we had this in common, and also many differences in the approaches. But in the commonalities, there were many themes that we shared, and from mapping these themes, we constructed 3 thematic fields, which then were translated to 3 working groups. And in March of 24, we started meeting all together, and then in these 3 working groups. These 3 working groups were the first on feminist methodologies, which included governance, which included methodologies, and which also included intersectional practice. The second working group was on archival practices from a feminist perspective. And the third was on sustainability and precarity in a larger sense, meaning having to resist to hostilities, but also to censorship towards feminist practice. And then, of course, also economic barriers, economic questions. We discussed very much from specific examples and case studies. Today, we have 2 roundtables that come out of these working groups. And the first roundtable is actually from the 2 working groups on sustainability and on feminist methodologies. And what we want to show is a little bit of all these discussions, which of course have been very rich. So we will only see a very small part of this. Each structure will reply to 1 question, which we already have discussed before, and in this way create a collective narrative. And so this first one will really focus on our structures and how we respond to specific contexts. And I would like to start. So Christian Camacho Light is the executive director of the AIR Gallery. The AIR Gallery is a feminist, artist-directed, non-profit arts organization and an alternative exhibition space for women and non-binary artists, and it is located in Brooklyn, New York, and which is very important for us and interesting, inspiring, is that you exist since 1972. So AIR is the longest running alternative space for women artists in the United States. And in our previous discussions, we have talked about this long existence and the change of the conditions, economic, but also political conditions. And so my question to you is, could you tell us a little bit more on how this changed, and notably on how you adapted your practice and your forms of existence, of governance, so that you're still here today and with us?
Sure, thank you. So like you mentioned, AIR was founded in 1972. The doors opened for the first exhibition on September 16th, 1972. At this time, it would still be another 2 years before a woman without a husband could sign up for a credit card or buy a mortgage, get a mortgage to purchase a home. This was also just about 4 months before, in January 1973, the Roe v. Wade decision at the US Supreme Court would establish a federal right to abortion. AIR comes out very much of the second wave feminist movement and the activist movements of the 60s and 70s. At the time, women artists were not just being shown less than men at museums and commercial galleries, but they weren't being shown at all. And rather than trying to make space in these institutions that were excluding them, 20 women came together and decided that they would make their own space. So they found a space on Wooster Street in Soho in Manhattan. At the time, New York City was in a financial crisis. There was no money, which is a problem, but it also meant that space was plentiful and the rent was very cheap. I mean, the monthly rent at the time was only, adjusted for inflation, about $2,000 a month. And so the 20 women, they created a cooperative. They did all the floors themselves. They turned it into an actual gallery. They sat the gallery themselves. They wrote and mailed their own press releases. They were this self-functioning, self-directed gallery. To also point towards like what this moment was like, the letter from New York State that incorporated the gallery, and then also the letter from the New York State Council on the Arts, which gave the gallery its very first grant, were both addressed "Dear Gentlemen" to this cooperative of women artists. Things change a little bit, right, as you get into the 80s going on the 90s. This is the moment in the US of the culture wars. NEA funding, especially for a small, scrappy feminist space like AIR, really disappears. I mean, in the NEA's case, it disappears entirely. You also see changing priorities on the parts of funders to support this kind of work, specifically feminist work. I mean, the culture wars, right, being a reaction in large part to the liberation movements of the 60s and the 70s. AIR, because its members were contributing time, volunteer time, and also contributing monthly payments in the form of dues, they sustained the organization through these periods, basically on this self-sustaining mutual empowerment model. Decades, for the sake of time, I won't go through every decade, but fast forwarding to the present moment, right, much has changed since 1972, but much hasn't. I mean, the Burns-Halperin report, which did a study in 2022 on representation of women artists at US museums, found that between 2008 and 2020, only 11% of acquisitions at US museums were of work by women artists, which underrepresents the US population by nearly a factor of 5. We also find ourselves in a moment where that federal right to abortion, which was established just a few months after AIR opened its doors, is now gone with the Dobbs decision. So something we did recently 2 years ago, this was before the actual decision leaked, but there were whispers in the community that something was going to change, and quite quickly. We collaborated, for instance, with the collective How to Perform an Abortion to do a project on reproductive justice at Frieze, New York in 2022. And so the fight continues, you know, like that. In the US, at least, the moment is appearing more and more like that early 1970s moment, but we're still here.
Thank you so much for sharing. Next, we're going to talk to Eva Kovac, Program Director at the Association for the Promotion of Women in Culture, or City of Women, based in Ljubljana, Slovenia, which was founded 30 years ago, so is also quite historic. And it was founded in 1996 after a first edition of City of Women, which was just a festival at the time. It's with the purpose of reoccurring annually. And over time, it's developed into a transdisciplinary festival dedicated to women creators, and has evolved into also being a nonprofit organization that supports exhibitions, art education, and community building. It seems that feminist approaches have always been very central to the way that you work and how you approach your community, and programming. And we were wondering if you could elaborate on the evolution of the festival's concepts, but also how you sought to meet the needs of your community, how you identified them, and how the festival and your programming was also received by audiences.
I will try to answer to some of the questions that you have posed, and maybe later in the conversation follow up. In some sense, I can really deeply speak about a short history. I have been with the City of Women organization or association for 4 years now. What I know from before is based mostly on documentation and conversations. And in the image that you see are kind of part of the paraphernalia that we have been making in the years before I actually joined the City of Women. In some sense, the next year will be, for me, very much the focus on this history. And because we have the 30th anniversary. In relation to the long history, what has been consistent was change of leadership, horizontal ways of working, as well as involvement of many people in programming and decision making. And thus, we have very dedicated audience, as well as a feeling of shared authorship for the festival and the association itself. At the same time, I must say that at the time of its funding, as well as today, there has been really also controversial reactions to the festival. For instance, especially during the last right-wing government that was in place 3 years ago now, I think. So. The festival itself, which is part of our work and the oldest part of our work, is focused on theater, visual arts, film, music, and more. So in a sense, it is really over-encompassing and runs for about 10 days every beginning of October every year in really different venues across Ljubljana, and also sometimes, so the capital of Slovenia, and also sometimes the neighboring cities. The festival was initiated actually prior to becoming an association by a governmental body, by an Office for Women's Policy, as it was called, in 1995. The idea was to employ culture as a tool for advancing gender equality. But the festival was organized only for one edition by this governmental body, exactly because of the controversies that have occurred in the media, specifically after. According to the first programming directors, the festival aimed initially to showcase quality art created by women, as they have said, although it did not explicitly embrace, feminist stance until its 15th edition. It presented works by artists of all genders that conveyed feminist perspectives and challenged the contemporary art canon. Over the years, the festival has increasingly centered on contemporary feminist themes, often framing each edition around a specific topic or advancing a specific methodology. Given the proximity, for instance, to Yugoslav wars and the pre-existing feminist networks, the themes of war and conflict have been very present in the start. For instance, the 2001 edition was very much focused on the racialized communities, specifically aiming to fix the previous underrepresentation. Or in 2002, the first roundtable on trans feminism was introduced. In 2008, the festival focused on what we call now more than human, and so on. In some sense, many themes have reoccurred because they are acute as well as a permanent problem, but I will continue maybe later. So sorry. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Eva. And I now would like to introduce Lorraine de Thibault from Contemporaine. Contemporaine has been founded in 2019 and brings together around 30 volunteers, and it works between Paris and Marseille. The association mobilizes around 3 activity areas: mentoring, events, and communication to combat gender inequalities in the art world. And I would like to ask you a question about the mentoring part. So you have set up workshops for artists, and you also have set up a program that is called Passerelle, and where you bring together younger, female, non-binary and trans artists, and with artists that have more experience. So you're doing important work in facilitating transmission between generations. And I would like you to tell us a little bit more about this program and also how it reflects feminist approaches. And maybe if you can tell us what was the motivation to create this? Was there a gap in the beginning that you wanted to work on?
Well, thank you. I don't have time to tackle all of these, I think, but I will try to. First, in terms of, I want to point out that we don't aim to only help young artists, but emerging artists, because emergence is not a question of age, especially for women. And maybe just to give you the context of the French art world, I would like to start with numbers. 68% of the students in art schools today in France are women, whereas the percentage of women artists exhibited in FRAC, so regional art centers around France, is only 30%. So knowing this, Contemporaine wanted to challenge that, of course, and we decided to do it through 3 areas of activities. First, the communication, and also gathering the numbers I just told you, for instance. Those are official numbers coming from ministers. And also events like this one that we are participating to and that we are organizing, and finally the mentorship. The mentorship, it's of course the workshop. Those are professional development workshops aiming to give practical information to emerging artists in order to, well, fight in the art world. And the mentoring program is called Passerelle. We started it in 2020. And the aim is really to create a supportive network for artists whose profiles are more vulnerable to violence and discrimination within the art world. This includes, of course, women, non-binary artists and transgender artists. And we try to do that, and we aim to do that, and we commit to do that in an intersectional way and in a practice of care, which is very important. Those are not keywords, those are commitments. And our goals with that is, well, to create community where emerging artists can find tools and practices that help them also feel a sense of belonging. To have this exchange of experience and knowledge, and to create this intergenerational support. Again, generational is not the right term here because it's just about being more established and more emerging. And what we do is, like, when artists are applying for the program, we have a list of mentors that are ready. It's about 8 or 10 mentors depending of the year, and we are trying to do really a matchmaking. Who is going to do the best duo? And once we've done that, once we've done given the framework, given the structure, and once we helped initiate the dialogue between them, it's up to them the way they want to collaborate. If they want to share a studio, if they want to organize a combined exhibition, or just to talk on the phone. And yeah, it's a wonderful program. I wish more and more artists knew about it. And if they are not accepted, please come to our workshops. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. And I'd like to introduce Sarah Williams. No? Sarah Williams is the co-founder and executive director of the Feminist Center for Creative Work based in Los Angeles. Sarah, you're one of 3 co-founders of the Feminist Center for Creative Work, which was founded in late 2012, as the Women's Center for Creative Work. The name change is an example of how you sought to better reflect your community, embrace the plurality of feminisms, but also reflect your feminist approaches within FCCW, which emphasizes collaborative work, notably through a shared leadership model. FCCW is currently led by 3 co-directors, I believe, to ensure that collaboration. But you also use what you called during our discussions these last months, a consensus-driven decision-making model. Could you share more about how this model functions in practice and the outcomes you've observed from this governance?
Yes, I'll try to hit a lot of that. I'll start with the co-leadership model. I'm here in Paris with my co-directors, Kamala Pulagandola, who's our communications director, and Mandy Harris-Williams, who's our programming director. And as you mentioned, this does sort of return to our founding structure, which was three people who came together to organize and start this organization in about 2012. We usually cite 2014, 2015 when we moved into our first space as like the real start of the organization. But yeah, I would say that in the beginning, I think there was a necessity of having a lot of support. It was not a job for anyone. It was all volunteer. It was very collaborative. So there was sort of a necessity of collaboration, and a lot of work was done by us 3 as well as in committees, and there was like a lot of people involved with the structure of the organization. Over time, that's evolved, and at one point I was serving as sort of these other founding directors left. I was serving as the sole executive director, which I think admittedly was like an incredibly lonely and challenging task, and in line with, I think, sort of some restructuring with the pandemic and financial difficulties of the organization during that time, we really returned to this idea of a co-leadership model, and Mandy and Kamala and I really worked together to reinvent the organization at that moment. And I do think there's a lot of ways it speaks to, I think, our ideals within a feminist approach to leading an organization around reduced hierarchy, I think an intersectional approach around how we're holding relationships, how we're making decisions, how we're planning and programming and everything. And so I guess, to speak to the consensus-based decision, we very much trust each other. I would say it's a modified consensus-based decision-making process. We very much trust each other in our lanes of activity, and day-to-day there's a lot of things we take care of, alone and in collaboration. But for big decisions, we really do, and when I say consensus, I really mean that as a process of coming to a decision, not necessarily that everyone agrees from the get-go that that's the right thing to do, but that we really, a proposal can be made, it can be discussed, concerns can be raised, things can be adapted, and then we come to, I think, an agreement before we're moving forward on major decisions, which really does help. I think it strengthens decisions. I think it really helps hold them throughout the organization. And a big one, I think, as an example, would be that we changed our name in about 2019, I want to say now, from Women's Center for Creative Work to Feminist Center for Creative Work. And I'd say there's a few reasons. One of the most felt reasons was it stopped reflecting who was there with us, who was running the organization, who was on our staff, who was in our community, who was wanting to do programming. A lot of our staff was non-binary. We had a lot of trans and non-binary artists in our community who were doing work. And after a lot of discussion, after a lot of proposals, after a lot of workshopping, we decided to shift to Feminist Center for Creative Work and keep a lot of the name, but just change that crucial part, which really, I think, realigned us with the politics of the work, and rather than an identity which didn't necessarily felt like it fit, because I think, as we all know, not all women are feminists, not all feminists are women, and it really helped us recommit to that politics of the work that we were doing. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I now would like to introduce Aida Adilbek from the Davra Collective. The Davra Collective is a research group that has been founded in 2021 by Saudat Ismailova as an extension of the project Chiltan for Documenta 15. And since then, you've been actively working both in Central Asia and beyond. You develop your activities through art making, publishing, and curating, for instance, film programs. Your goal is to connect and develop the Central Asian art scene by fostering exchange and of experiences within the region as a priority, but also beyond. And your focus is to study and reimagine Central Asia today. So in our previous discussions, we have spoken a little bit, or you have spoken rather, about the lack of institutional support and also about restrictions in speech and of artistic and research positions in the Central Asian context. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, and also tell us how you turn these constraints into something productive and how you work collectively in this context?
Thank you. So yeah, I think I need to outline right away that DAVRA is rather than an organization or legal entity, we're still kind of a collective form, as we call ourselves a research group, because we consist not of only of artists, but of art practitioners, it's researchers, curators, and there is a core of 8 people, but we're constantly extending that circle, which DAVRA is for us. It's that we are ready to collaborate, communicate, and to create kind of new ways to create together or work together. And as you noted already, our main goal is to reclaim history and culture of Central Asia through artistic expressions and practices. But we also kind of in the future, and now hopefully step by step, we wish to create a platform that would work as a bridge to connect the world with Central Asian experts. As I think we know, former colonies, we suffer from the fact that all of the narratives about Central Asia today are created outside of Central Asia by foreigners, settlers, and kind of former empires, and therefore there are not many authentic, strong voices from Central Asia presented on a big scenes or wherever. So for us, I think it's also really important not to represent us or to kind of represent all of Central Asia in us, but also to kind of pinpoint that, you know, there are a lot of other people who are working in this field and maybe they're not known, they're not famous enough or not getting enough visibility. So we wish to create that platform both online and in reality, in kind of physical world. And for us, I think it's also really important at this moment for me to pinpoint that with the that you said restrictions of speech and artistic expressions, that the context and the narrative of politics, of history, of culture in Central Asia is very, very varied. If you look at the map, Central Asia takes up a huge space on the map, and it has been impacting a lot on what we know as ecological kind of instances in Eurasia, right, or political situations. And if we look into the history, it has such an intertwined, complex and difficult history, so it's not homogeneous. And whatever narrative I'm living in, my neighbors, my colleagues, they're not living in the same situation. So for us, I think it's also really important, so we would all have a space and voice to address those narratives. Frankly, it's not only DAVRA. In Central Asia, there are many, many initiatives and organizations which are addressing both activism, feminist rights, LGBTQ, queer rights, human rights, which is really important. And so for us, I think, yeah, it's really great that we are able to find our space in there and to work through visual art or through writing, through research, through rewriting and reminding ourselves of the realities that we're living in. And as you said, to keep on working and to keep on creating. I think what we and many other initiatives have used and using as a tool is to just keep on doing, keep on creating, especially in the times when the space for that is narrowing and narrowing down, because what we, as you said, work in not only in Central Asia or beyond Central Asia, but we want to also expand the idea of Central Asia to a non-colonial idea of it, because we think that Central Asia consists of many spaces that are kind of beyond what we know geographically today. And in spaces like in countries like Afghanistan and in East Turkestan, where people are silenced every day, I think for us to have a chance to speak up and to create is always a kind of a huge privilege. And so if we are able to use this to empower ourselves and to encourage others to do the same, that's kind of pretty much a huge deal already. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Aida. Now we would like to go to UK, and I introduce Anna Fox, who is the director of Fast Forward. Fast Forward is a research project that started in 2014, based at the University for Creative Arts in the UK. You work to highlight the work of women and non-binary photographers, and you question how established canons have been formed. You are also creating an international network of women in photography and showcase emerging and established photography by women and non-binary people. You promote opportunities and you organize events like the Fast Forward conference. So we spoke about the Central Asian context, so now we have a very different context. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you work in the UK, which are your specific challenges, and which is the organizational form that you found to work?
Okay, well, I also plan to talk a little bit about our resources. And so we're slightly different from some of the other groups in the sense that we are part of a university, and we were formed because of the management and research staff at the university. And that gives us a certain amount of security in the sense that my job, part of my job is secured by them, and also a research officer part-time, and a freelance project manager who's here, Maria Kapaiva. So we have that already to start with. We don't actually have a room at the university, and we predominantly work with meetings online between us. Every year inside the university we can apply for small-scale grants, and there's 2 or 3 that we can apply for, and these are competitive. So again, we're not guaranteed that we can be awarded these, but because of our previous achievements and histories and partners, we've had relatively good success with this, so this is great. And that kind of sets the ground for us to be able to develop partnerships and develop some of our key activities, which include our conferences. But also being part of an educational institution in the UK, we have access, we're privileged enough to have access to some much larger awards, such as awards from the Arts and Humanities Research Council at the UK Research Initiative, who have funded our major project twice now, putting ourselves in the picture, where we're working with 5 different organisations across the UK and 20 migrant and refugee women to create a mentorship and training project. You can read all about this project on the website and download the publication that we've made from part 1 of it as a free thing. So we also had access to something, the Leverhulme Trust, who funded an international network project that enabled us to take partners, ourselves and partners, to 5 different regions of the world and have face-to-face meetings and private research workshops. This was incredibly important, and I know, there's environmental concerns about traveling and that we have Zoom and what have you now, but meeting face-to-face with people in Nigeria, Brazil, India, Finland and the US, and having these private workshops, very similar to what we've had in the last couple of days with AWARE, were extraordinary times that we could actually talk about issues that we all faced in different places. And we built kind of some very interesting strengths from that exchange of information, because all of our issues were quite different, but we learned something from how people had challenged whatever was facing them in their space. That international networking activity project led us to our 3rd conference at Tate Modern, and we, the conference program is the thing that really promotes most of our key aims. So we go into our conferences as collaborations, And for each conference we run, usually there are people who come to us at the conference and say, we'd like to do another Fast Forward conference. So together, in partnership, we raise funding for that, both from our university and from whichever university or organization that they're working with. Together with organizations like Alliance Française and British Council and the Goethe Institute and organizations like that. So the conferences enabled us to promote one of our key aims, which is promoting new knowledge about women in photography, interrupting the burgeoning patriarchal histories of photography, and to recognize the practices and methodologies of women working in the field. So that's a continuing program, and we are about to launch our 6th conference in partnership with the University of Nicholas Copernicus in Torun in North Poland, together in collaboration with Vintage Photography Festival in Bydgoszcz in Poland. And the announcement for that will come out on our website and in our newsletter, which you can subscribe to and then take part in the network through that subscription, again through our website.
Thank you so much, Anna. Next, we're going to be hearing from Aldeide Delgado, co-founder and director of Women Photographers International Archive, or WOPHA, based in Miami, Florida. You're a nonprofit organization dedicated to researching and promoting women identified, and non-binary photographers from the 19th century to today. It is an extension, I believe, of your 2013 project, Catalog of Cuban Women Photographers, compiling information of women photographers from around the world. Today, however, your activities ranged from digitizing historical archives, creating a specialized library of books about women artists, publishing catalogs and books, lectures, workshops, and your WOPHA Congress, which brings together global organizations, art historians, theorists, and curators focused on women photographers, and which has been a great inspiration to us. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about your Congress, the way that in which feminist approaches have informed WOPHA's development leading to that Congress, and what impact you've seen that have for you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the invitation, and it has been a pleasure to be part of this incredible group. I would like to start referring to how, taking as a point of departure what we understand as women, I think is very important, and how for us the category women has functioned as an opaque entity that has hidden the privilege of certain groups of women, white, heterosexual, cisgender, middle-class women, about other racialized women and or dissident subjectivities. By using this term, we recognize that there are different ways to be a woman according to class, race, sexual orientation, age, religion, creed, ability, and gender, and that none of these factors can be left out in considering the totality of cis and trans women's life experiences. One of the main authors that have been an inspiration for my practice has been Afrofeminist scholar Bell Hooks, particularly when she mentions, and I quote, that bodies who experience and are shaped by specific forms of sexist oppression may be socially configured as women, close quote. So from this perspective, we understand the category as a political subject whose awareness of historical gender oppression affords them a condition of resistance and struggle. One of the main topics that I have been researching is how the creation of collectives or communities of women photographers based on tenets of solidarity and networking have been a fundamental strategy used historically and through the present to highlight the contributions of women in the history of photography. If we analyze, we have seen that since the 70s, several publications have addressed women in the history of photography. Still, these publications reinforce the idea of the single author. So I thought that there were still a lot of work to be done, highlighting those communally and collaborative experiences of women in photography. For that reason, we published in 2021, in tandem with the 2021 WOPHA Congress, the publication that works as a photo book, as a directory, and as a collective manifesto of the book Becoming Sisters, Women Photography Collectives and Organizations. This is a publication where 40 international collectives and organizations from around the world, including When Aware and as well Fast Forward, were recognized. It was like a very collaborative project. For me, this is like the picture of the Congress and represents how I have been, thinking as well on the relationship among islands as a very metaphorical approach to how I understand my practice. Just to finish, because I know we don't have too much time, but a very element that is important to the decolonial and feminist practice of WOFA is the specific location where we are and how I understand Miami as a place, as a political place, a border space between the Americas, and how through this specific location we are doing this exercise of rewriting the history of photography, putting the Caribbean and the Caribbean intellectual thought as a center.
Thank you so much, Aldeide. And I have to say that you were an inspiration as well for Nest, so thank you for that. And those interested in looking at Becoming Sisters, it is available at the Aware Research Center for anybody to come and look at it. Next, I'd like to speak to Elvira Rilova, Vice President of Mujeres en las Artes Visuales in Spain. Mujeres en las Artes Visuales is a large-scale membership organization with over 750 members, which include curators, artists, art workers, gallerists, critics, and researchers from all across Spain, with the goal of promoting real, effective equality between the genders in the art world. MAV has also built a network of Spanish museums. In our discussion, you mentioned as well a tool that can be used by museums to measure the percentage of women artists in their collections, and so that to advocate for gender parity. Could you tell us more of the impact that you've seen this tool have? And additionally, could you maybe develop on how you think your position as a nonprofit and independent organization has helped you in that work?
So thank you, Aware, for having us here. It's a big pleasure. So for MAV, numbers has always been a priority for us because you get the whole picture about the situation of in terms of equality of artists, women artists. So in 2019, for our 10th anniversary, we decided to launch this tool. In our history, we have been always developing these reports in art fairs and also in museums and art centers in terms of equality of visibility of the women, artist women. So we decided to launch this tool, which is a survey with 70 questions, and museums can find out how are they developing their measures of gender equality. So in this questionnaire, you have like questions in terms of collections, solo exhibitions, collective exhibitions, in terms of leadership in the museum. Is it a man director or a women director? The staff of the museum, and how you relate with your public. For example, do you have diaper changing in the men's restroom or just in the women's toilet, for saying. So it was a huge success. More than 30 museums developed the tool. At the beginning, it was we were thinking about just for the contemporary art museums, but a lot of museums, historic museums, archaeological museums also developed the tool. And the Ministry of Culture of Spain decided to copy our tool and improve it in their own tool, but inspired by us in the libraries and the theaters, depending on the ministry, and also Iber Museums, which is a community of museums in Portugal, Spain, and Latin America. They also copy or were inspired by our tool to improve their own tool as well. So after that, the museums developing the tool, they decided to create this network called Museums for Equality. And right now they are working together. There are like 50 Spanish museums working together on the visibility of women artists. Yeah, I think being independent has helped us to accompany them in this process. We hope that it will be a road that we will continue working with the museums and art centers together. Not only in Spain, we were looking forward to develop this tool in so much countries. So here we are. If you want more information, everything is on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvira. I now would like to introduce Angela Jimu of Zimbabwe Association of Female Photographers. As the Zimbabwe Association of Female Photographers, you highlight that women have a different story to tell and that this perspective is missing in the media. Your goal is to use documentary photography to provide an alternative to the media's male-centered narratives and to increase visual literacy in Zimbabwe. You also strive to raise the standard of professionalism in the communication industries through training, networking, and the promotion of your members' work. So as MAF, you strive to structural change towards a better representation of women and their vision in the sector, and you are also a membership organization. I would like to ask you to say a few words about the situation of women photographers in Zimbabwe and your actions, and also how the membership model helps to advance your goals.
Thank you, Nina. Before I can get into your question, I just want to talk about this picture and how we came to choose this picture. It was in 2017. We had organized the World Press Photo Exhibition, and it came to Harare, and whilst it was there, we had a bloodless coup. Everything seemed normal, but in the background, something was happening. So we had a workshop with the Dutch photographer Chris de Bode, and most of our members were there, and we had honorary members. Our male honorary members were part of this workshop. So being a photographer in Zimbabwe, a female photographer, when we started in 2013, there was just a handful of female photographers, and it was really difficult working in the field. There wasn't a photography school in Zimbabwe, and most of us had to go to South Africa to the market for the workshop. And then when we went back to Zimbabwe, we needed a support structure. There were a few female photographers, and it was very difficult working in the field. That's why we decided to come up with the Zimbabwe Association of Female Photographers. Being a member-based organization was a decision that we took, because if you're out in the field and you're lonely and you need other female photographers, or you need that solidarity, you would know that there's the ZAFP. This is a structure that is for female photographers. We network, we collaborate, we share information, we share ideas. And recently, one of our members, we were able to help one of our members after their image was used without permission, and they were disrespected. But because they were part of our network, we were able to get them a lawyer, and then we were able to get them recourse, because they are part of that network, part of the solidarity. So we believe in collaboration. We've worked with different organizations just to be able to get the work of our photographers out there. You know, just being there for each other. It's just not about the work. It's also about the social aspect of it. So it's not just you as a photographer in the field. We can also help with other aspects of your life. So in the long and short of it, we are just a network. We are about solidarity, working together, promoting each other's work, because it can be difficult, but if you're part of a network, it just gets better and it gets lighter. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angela. Now we are going to introduce Yasmin Rifai, creative director of Haven for Artists, based in Beirut, Lebanon. Haven for Artists, to give some background, is a cultural feminist organization that works at the intersection of art and activism as a digital and physical platform supporting cultural work and knowledge production rooted in intersectional feminism, gender, racial justice, and the decolonial perspectives. You were founded in 2011, and your organization functions now as a literal haven for artists from diverse backgrounds, strongly anchored in your communities, including the LGBTQAI+ community in Lebanon. Welcoming and providing a safe space just became a particular urgency in your current situation of war. So I was wondering if you could tell us how your response to the situation builds on your previous methodologies and work.
So Haven's methods have always been informed by and created with the community it aims to serve. Our workshops, our exhibitions, and the publications and the zines that we produce center and amplify marginalized voices, becoming an active archive of the time. Our work is rooted in anti-colonial practices, and our programming always centers queer and feminist narratives, and how it's impossible to achieve the liberation of the body without the liberation of the land. In times of heightened urgencies, these learnings are materialized into actions on the ground. During the 2019 revolution, Haven welcomed activists to meet and organize for protests inside the space, day and night. After the 2020 blast, the space became a shelter for queers and migrant workers living in Lebanon. And for the past 2 months, and following the Zionist aggression on Lebanon, it has been used as a storage space for mattresses and pillows, and blankets and other in-kind donations to distribute, facing the displacement of over 1.2 million people within Lebanon, and within a country where the state is practically absent. We're part of a very large network of art institutions around the country. These connections are automatically activated in times of urgency, and we adapt our skills according to the new needs. The workers and truck drivers that help us carry artworks for exhibitions around the city switch now to picking up and dropping off food and material necessities. Designers switch from working on publications, exhibitions, posters, to working and designing fundraisers and call-outs for volunteers. Artists and curators utilize their international networks to fundraise for our people on the ground, as well as writing political statements and spreading the truth in the face of Western propaganda. This is the arts community. They are radical, they are active, and they keep on producing. And as we engage in constant relief work, we are also bearing witness. We are witnessing the attempts at our erasure and the silence of the world as we face annihilation. We also witness the love, the courage, and the strength of our people. We archive as we go, on our phones, with our eyes, with our memory, and with the conversations that we have. The Zionist aggression on Lebanon did not start in the summer, and it has never been just a war. I was born and raised knowing that at my border, Palestine is occupied, and the south of Lebanon was occupied and liberated in the year 2000. And that this occupier is constantly planning to expand towards my land, as it has been trying to do time and time again since the early 60s. This reality has always informed our methodology at Haven, how we think of archiving, how we perceive our cultural responsibility. This shape-shifting that Haven went through since its 13 years of existence has redefined the meaning of safety for us as a team and as a community, as well as the meaning of cultural production and preservation. If we want to preserve culture, we need to fight for the survival of the people who weave it. And that does not only mean our direct community of women and queer artists. It means the larger community that makes our history what it was and what it is becoming. It also means fighting to preserve the trees under which we sit, the rivers from which we drink, and the sky that allows our minds to wander. Often when I go to museums, especially in the global north, I notice how much is missing. Missing artists, missing discourses, missing people, lives, and ideas that have been neglected or removed from the general narrative. Many themes are still missing or falsely addressed, like race, gender, and the voices of indigenous populations from around the world that have suffered from the violence and dispossession of colonial powers. That is because history is always written by the victor. The practical work that we do in our cultural space back in Beirut is simply resisting erasure, both intellectually and materially. In that sense, it is making sure that our people, and therefore our culture, not only survive this attempt at erasure, but thrives to one day flood the white walls of museums with narratives of resistance, liberation, and indigenous victory.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yasmin, for those powerful words. I also want to thank all of you today for your generosity, for your time, and for sharing your knowledge with us. As you may have seen, our aim here was to show how our collective work can be a strategy, and also how coming together around that, the objective of amplifying the voices of women and queer people in the arts and beyond can be a place where we come together to continue to build collaboratively, collectively, and become stronger as an alliance. I want to thank you again, and thank you all for being here today. And we'd like to open up for maybe a few questions, 2 or 3 questions, before we pause.
Okay, you've been discussing yesterday intensely. Now, do you feel that there are things in common hearing you today, and things that differ from, I mean, I would like more to talk about what's in common. What do you feel, what do you think is in common with all of you?
To me, it's not about what we have in common, but what about what we can give and help, and how we can help each other. Basically, knowing what are our forces, our strengths, and listing them, and then say, okay, I'm open to business for that. Do you need that? And also, this is my list of needs. Did you work on that already? And could you help me on this? And I feel yesterday it was a bit more about this.
Yeah, I would say the difference seems to be like the context of the work, and I think every organization is working really diligently to be responsive to the context that they're working in, and that often looks a bit different or has different urgencies to it, but generally that there's, yeah, like a desire to be responsive within the context that we're working.
Thank you. I think one of the things that we have in common is the founding of the organizations, the motives behind it. Like there's an issue that needs to be addressed, and the organization comes in and is addressing that issue. So that I think that's what we have in common, and the passion to continue doing that despite everything else that might be going on around us. We have that passion to continue filling that gap.
And maybe also knowing now, after this introduction and also before online, the practices of everybody else, this kind of reconfirms that people have worked in worse and better conditions, and that we can kind of rely on exchange and continue, and also, yeah, learn.
Hello, thank you everybody for sharing about your practices. Yasmin, I am particularly looking to meet the goals of the talk, A Story Named Joy. And I am curious, what are ways in which this large audience could materially support the work that is being done at Haven today?
Can you hear me? Are you sure? I think right now, especially with the aggression that is happening, it's important for people to take on the responsibility of labor on themselves, to be able to support countries that are already where the people living there are extremely burnt out and tired of re-explaining the same narrative, sharing the same information. Today, very simply, I think the best is to listen, to research, and to be flexible in listening to the perspectives of people who might be distant from you and your experiences. And something else that is on my mind simply is to donate, because we are facing very rich powers, and really money is a huge issue for our continuation. Haven's future is a question mark because of the boycott that we do and because of the lack of funding that we have. So yeah, donate. It's on our Instagram, Haven for Artists. Thanks.